Hi, welcome to What the Flick, everybody. I'm Matt Atchity, that's Ben Mankiewicz. We're here to talk about the late legendary director George A. Romero, all but single-handedly invented the zombie genre. Huge loss to film. We would not have the modern zombie obsession, I think, without what he did starting in the 60s with Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, and it seems to be very clear that that's the consensus, that without George Romero, we don't have zombies. And these aren't my kind of movies. They never were. And as a result, zombie stuff now really isn't my kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's
right.
The walkers in Game of Thrones, which is a show I love. They're my least favorite part of Game of Thrones. But you just read the way other directors talk about George Romero, like, and this was a revered guy, a respected guy, and what I liked best was in reading about him was his willingness to share, and like he loved this idea of a collaborative process.
Yeah,
and that's cool, and all these tips he left for how to get your movie made. Right?
Yeah.
Don't fall, only fall in love with the thing you're really falling in love with, and do not fall in love with everything else. Be willing to cut that. The people you have working for you, they're filmmakers.
Yeah.
Work with them. They know what they're doing. Give them stuff to do. So that impressed the hell out of me.
Yeah, I think that Romero easily gets overlooked because of the genre that he worked in. But he's one of those guys, and we're seeing a bit of this kind of on the resurgence in the last 10 years with this different take on horror movies where they're getting very socially aware again. But Romero was a guy that really, if not started it, really like made that effective, right? There's definitely social commentary in each of his original zombie trilogy that you may not see in some of his later work, and the 80s spend a lot of time, especially. You just get, there's a celebration of gore, which is fine, but Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead all have particular social commentary that they're doing, and really sharp commentary. And I think that one of the things that doesn't get talked about that much in modern kind of zombie tropes is how much people, I think there's I often wonder, like, what's the appeal of why people are obsessed with zombies? And is it, a subtext for xenophobia? Is it, fears of the other? I don't know, right? But I think he was definitely using that. He's certainly using zombies in the first film to kind of comment on race relations and bigotry and tweak what the audience's expectations are, especially how provocative it is that he's got a black leading man kind of running the show in the first film.
Right.
Dawn of the Dead, like, look at all these zombies at the mall. Like, they go back to the mall because that's what they're used to, right? Like, it's this great comment on consumer culture, and that allows him and other filmmakers to kind of address an agenda against, like, as he would talk about, his stories are about what people do to each other. The zombies don't have an agenda. His stories are about how people react to each other, and what mistakes and what evil they do to each other in the face of something, in the face of a disaster.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, it's also relevant now politically. Like if you think this is a disaster, right? Like how are we handling it, the rest of us? And I would say in many cases incredibly poorly.
Yeah.
Fighting among ourselves. Exiling people.
Right.
Because they disagree, or or perhaps justifiably because of the manner in which they, there are choices to be made in difficult times, and those movies certainly explored that. I was reading, there's what site does this from? Film School Rejects did 9 tips that Romero gave, and some of them were great because you don't expect it from Romero. I had a gag with a flare gun, he writes in this film, and there's a gag with a fire extinguisher, and you can't do those things mechanically, so CG really helps. When you're working on a low budget, get you off the set quicker. If the gun doesn't go off, you don't have to reshoot it. You can paint it. You can paint in the flash. That's a real advantage when you have to work quickly. When you're working on a low budget, the most expensive time is the time spent on set. The words of the day are get off the set as quickly as possible. So CG enables you to do that. Like there's this sense that no, everything's got to be done. He's like, no, man, no.
Right.
Like, you know, we're making a fantasy here, and if this works, this works.
Right.
And it's quicker and it's cheaper, and we got to go on. We got to do the next thing.
Right, and you know, it's an interesting look at a guy like that who had such small budgets and managed to make really impactful films within that context. I mean, Corman did this too, right? It's that mindset of like, how much can we do as fast as possible and still make it work, as opposed to Kubrick, where like, I'm going to burn everybody's time and we're going to do 57 takes of this. Right, because I'm not getting what I want. Right. Okay, sure, that works for Kubrick, but you know, is that necessary for everybody? It's not.
You can't give advice. He says all you can do is, hey, look, stick to your guns. If you have an idea in your heart, you want to try and express that, it's on you. Whether you express that well enough is on you. The only advice you can give is don't let the bad stuff keep you down. Move on. Move on. Move on.
Good life advice.
You have to be very thick-skinned and tenacious to survive in this business. I try to stay far from all of it, out in the middle of the country. There's a lot less scrutiny. Nobody ever shows up on my sets. I always imagine studio execs saying, where is he shooting? Pittsburgh? Forget it.
That's a really smart move,
That is a smart move, yeah.
That's a genius move.
Yeah, but interesting guy, and you see the number of directors who were, again, who paid attention to him, who were influenced by him. That's significant. That's when you always know that someone of note has left. So, and for me to rewatch those movies, and you know, whereas when I saw them, I'm rolling my eyes at zombie stuff. Like I'm not getting his bigger point.
Right, you know, in those original movies, you know, and I'll just leave you like, yes, it's easy to look back at those and say, oh, those are cheesy, but you know, keep in mind, this is a guy working on a budget, and you know, the great Tom Savini like invents new ways of doing effects and becomes the guy that we all kind of know and love. And there's a reason he shows up in From Dusk Till Dawn, is because it's Tom Savini, and he creates these, you know, again, you could look back and be like, oh, that's gross and that's so fake. At the time, it's amazing, and it helps tell those stories. And you know, it's a tribute to Romero's resourcefulness and tenacity and talent and just vision that he was able to be so impactful when, you know, he wasn't working with multi-million-dollar budgets, and you know, he casts a long shadow.